Hey cousins, this is Esmee Streachailt, and I am reading the new Medusas, Survivors and Endurance for Medusa Rising. It begins with a little letter to you and to us. To the Medusas and the people. It must have been grating to sit through that speech, but thank you for being there, for forcing the country and the world to bear witness to your strength and dignity. We are collectively being subjected to a campaign of deliberate emotional and moral abuse. It's part of the mustard gas of lies and distractions that are also real threats. The goal is our moral, intellectual, and collective collapse into apathy and collaboration by default. Fascists want you to care about yourself just enough to preserve yourself, just enough to serve them. Beyond that, not even to care about yourself. The insights offered by the woman quoted from the account at the Mama Attorney early in a long read from an ex-CIA agent working human trafficking cases are helpful to keep in mind. I am linking them here in the article. She offers a dose of perspective and cold distance that is protective, tonic. The files are truth, made partial and weaponized to abuse us and re-traumatize the survivors, the new Medusas. Alan Zarnowski has written a book called Jormungandr. There we go. Jormungandr. Let me get my old Swedish together. My old Norse. It's a book about the way that human trafficking, especially sex trafficking and child trafficking, make the world go round, surround us all of the time. The book is on the way to my house. We need more of this man. Please read the opening quotations there from at the Mama Attorney's thread that Adam quotes here. Before you go on to the rest of this post. So the rest of this post. Once upon a time, Athena was not the favorite daughter of patriarchy. She was something older, something more earthly, snakes accompanying her in many of her archaic images. See Dashu's Women in Greek Mythography, pages 168 to 180. A snake lived in her temple, according to Herodotus, and some of the oldest images, like the Pelagasian Athena, show snakes coming from her body. This is Dashu on page 169. Athena suffered one of the most intense patriarchal reversals, from the forgotten whatever her own power may have been, to a daughter whose mother Zeus swallowed, who was his wife and older sister. And her birth converted Athena to being his alone. The womb envy is that intense. All manner of snake goddesses are common in matriarchal Europe, and they are connected to both Medusa and Athena. Does not mean that these two goddesses are connected in some older and unknown story, but it does mean that when Medusa is punished by the attribution of snakes to her, some deep, dark magic is being done to a goddess by the power of man's storytelling. In the survivors of the global Epstein cabal, by which I mean the powers of the whole world in which we live, I see Medusa, both the girl confronted with the full power of the patriarchy and the goddess faithful to animals, paragon of courage, running the wilds with Artemis. I see the girl suddenly assaulted in Epstein's office, the girl of the notebook whose 3 babies were taken from her, the girls kept sequestered on a ranch, an island, in an apartment by the threat of even more unimaginable violence. If you tell, we will send Perseus to kill you. These women who were those girls will stare at Poseidon tonight. I write this on February 24th, 2026. Brother of the modern Zeus, Epstein's bestie, as this illegitimate despot addresses a nation 70% of whose citizens loathe him. His own Athena, Pam Bondi, would not look at these women they witnessed when they witnessed her testimony to the Senate. And Pam knows what looking a Gorgon in the eyes does to you. Like Medusa, these intrepid women have been marked and sent out to their isolation. Hundreds of reports of rape, torture, murder, forced abortion, child abduction, forced pregnancy. And the system turned its back again and again, just as Bondi did. Isolate, blame, silence, consume. Like Medusa, they are still here and they are loud. For decades, these champions, these warriors have endured every trick our patriarchal law, economy, and fraternity have to play against them. Beneath their calm, I am sure that the need for vindication seethes. We should be fine with that rage. The blood these men have taken from these women calls out for its debt to be paid. But still, after all these decades, these millennia, the world cannot fully awaken to what it allows, how it really works, what it celebrates. These girls were coin in an economy, one that is not just a product of our long history, but that has quite literally designed our recent history. We're living in the Epstein Class's simulation of a world. This revelation of the men, their chummy rapiness, their influence over, it seems, every nation, every institution, most areas of knowledge, the media, the arts, it should genuinely shatter the world. The abyss should open and shake. Their lesser imitators, the Tates and their ilk, they should be hiding from us. Writing of the inhale, many normies are taking as the facts of the files begin to cohere, the silence of that in-breath. Zarnowski describes the ontological shock as all the normies discover and begin to digest this reality. The feminists took the red pill long ago. To us, it is only nature working in her way that the manosphere and women's withdrawal from men, 4B, and real estate trends arise at the same time. In this man's world, where the UN calculates that 430 million plus women alive today have been sexually assaulted, we are Medusa. The monster Medusa is designed by man's myths to be uncanny, to confront us with an ontological shock. This is real. This is the power of these gods. Bow down or become her. Zarnowski writes, what people are experiencing right now is a phenomenon called ontological shock. This sort of shock is a profound, often extremely traumatic form of disorientation when one's fundamental understanding of how reality and the universe works is shattered. I had that feeling when I read this article at Nerve News. See the link in the post. Something massive and vague clicked into place. We've made a million movies about that shock. I felt dizzy and lost for a few minutes. And then I remembered who I am. We talk of structural power as if it's weather, patriarchy as if it's geology, but they're not. They're deliberate, coordinated action. Maybe not all men, but always plenty of men, always enough men to traumatize nearly 1 billion women. I've called it the background radiation of men's violence, but this also is too natural a metaphor. It's meant to get at the scale, but its passivity misses the mark. We live in a simulation of a culture made by these people. They encoded it. It's their algorithm. Medusa looks disconcertingly inhuman to convince us of the unman's God's power to harm us, to exile us from all society. Shame. Why were you in that temple anyway? These men collectively are a system, but individually are just mortal human males. They can be brought to account, or, if our cultures would like to ever be worth a shit. We evolved to live in cultures focused on meeting needs, creating as much enjoyment as did not interfere with meeting needs, which was quite a lot, actually. that were centered around children and their mothers materially and spiritually and sometimes politically, and that deliberately refused to become extractive and violent. Whatever the whatever the Evo psych bros around Jeffrey Epstein say, we did not evolve to be this now. Patriarchy makes reversals of matrist and matriarchal deep time because patriarchy is a reversal. We live in a rape world because the men designing it are gleeful rapists. In the cultures where we lived in nature as nature, in our natural state, we lived in matristic, matriarchal cultures. We thrived, we invented, we traded, we cared for needs. We made medicines and art, we built cities and temples, we sang and worshipped. We learned others' languages and symbols, tech and methods. We shared fundamental values across thousands of miles of cultures for rocking up on 100,000 years or so. We didn't rape, we didn't hoard, we didn't dominate. And that was all by design, on purpose. It was also coded. There is a matriarchal algorithm, and it's in those images and in those symbols that we see in the caves, in the writing we can't read now. Gimbutas, Eisler, Dashu, Deva, whose before war collects and solidifies our deep history and its contemporary evidence for all those stubborn hierarchists who keep tying themselves in non-Euclidean knots of ill logic to avoid admitting the truth. There was a before war. There was a before patriarchy. It's just facts. We really do not have to rehearse this anymore. We didn't thank some sky god for our food then. We thanked our food for our food. Which means we can curb and reprimand these criminal men and choose to organize for our healthier and more peaceful future. Problem is, our justice and carceral systems are not designed to do this work for now, but our social and moral systems are. We're just not applying them because of due process. But like the immigration courts, the systems there, we have no possibility of due process because the bureaucracy needed for the process is woeful and woe begone. The powerful men who could fix this, uninterested. I beg you, where is the due process for the Epstein class, for the victims of that complex ruling class trafficking ring, for the between 300 and 500,000 rape survivors in the US annually? Again, the women's own testimony is not evidence, and the bureaucracy is woeful and woe begone. It's interesting to me that Medusa is never far from these stories, sometimes even physically, right? There's a story from The Nerve about Peter Mandelson and the Russia super yacht connected to Epstein. The blurb for the article that I link here. When Britain's most powerful political fixer was caught on the oligarch's boat in Corfu, we called it Yachtgate and moved on. The Epstein Files now reveal the full picture, a web of Russian money, pedophile compromat, and new labor access that shaped a decade of British politics. An article by Tasman Shah at The Nerve. You see, Corfu is the island where the temple to Artemis has that great, big, replete, pre-patriarchal-y looking Medusa on the pediment with her children, the Pegasus and Chrysor, with the strange mythical leopards looking very chummy with her. You know, they went so far in their reversals that when young women got married in Greece, for a while anyway, when young women were sent to be married to men, I guess they didn't get married, they were just sent to be married, they had to go to Artemis's temple, right? Mistress of the beasts, goddess of the forest, of all things wild and untamed and virginal, right? Self-sovereign, self-contained, and fucking apologize to the goddess for surrendering their virginity to marriage. They took Artemis, sort of replete image of pre-patriarchal woman, huntress, athlete, brilliant mind, right? Friend to women, and turned her into a jealous guardian of virginity that women had to go and formally separate themselves from before they were sent to marry some man they probably didn't even like and who was going to lock her in the back of the house and not give her quite enough food. Let's sit with that way of cutting women off from their power. And then let's look at the image of 3 women from Crete, right? From the pre-Minoan and Minoan culture here. These three, maybe priestesses, maybe sisters. The 3 women in blue from the frieze on Crete. Not terribly far from Corfu. These women were sovereign, self-possessed, whole, relaxed. They never had to apologize to Artemis. Where is their justice? Well, that's a trick question. They didn't need any. Their culture didn't even dream of grinding them into the deserts of New Mexico. Trapped in a system designed, iterated, and maintained to prevent justice for women. That is where these new Medusas and all of us are living, because men have designed it that way. A simulation in which a motherless goddess makes good fairies of the Furies whose work it is to avenge blood debt to the mother. You feel me? We imagine that Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades and their various sons had complex inner lives. We imagine that the Abrahamic God has an interesting inner life. We must be that life after all. But I have news. They do not. They are not okay. How do we know? The systems their stories justified, and that we still inhabit the most recent layer of, were never designed to meet human needs, but to exploit those needs to create surplus value, which we now call productivity. The owner, rentier, Epstein Zeus class can then hoard. Max Dashu put it this way when she was on the Circe Salon podcast last year talking about her book, Women in Greek Mythography, and the Titanides. The hosts asked her, why so much rape in Greek mythology? And Max put it real succinctly. She said, well, there's so much rape of mortal women and goddesses, even a god's mother, to show the women of patriarchal Greece that this is inevitable, that there is no escape from this violence. You might as well submit. I am not the only feminist to observe that patriarchy has worked over the millennia to reward and therefore select for violent, abusive men. From Hammurabi's code to the Epstein emails, we see regular practice of the destruction of women. We see the needs and imaginations of dark triad disordered men, the narcissism and victimization, the expert manipulation and dissimulation, the psychopathy and total lack of human connection. What is going on inside such a personality, such a mind? Nothing. There is no inner life there. They consume and destroy the people around them because they have no inside, and their need can never be met. No other self can supply one's need for selfhood. They design societies and cultures to fill the void too. The fashion photographer, the many modeling agents, the teen fashion brands, the public intellectuals, the tech bros, the heads of governments, agencies, departments, the bankers and venture capitalists, the university presidents and board members, the beauty standards we're all beginning to realize are based on their desire for 11, 12, 10, 9-year-old girls. I mean, right down to the campaign against tenure and the humanities writ large, against the feminists in particular. The men who design the world are his men. They have done it right in front of us, barely concealed, splashed on the social pages and tabloids, celebrated in long-running TV series, long-running TV series, smirking at us the whole time they trained us to celebrate their death world. And that, my dear cousins, is what the DOJ is doing to all of us now with the files. It's dumping the truth of the violence on us, the ontological revelation as a cudgel to break us, too, to show us that, yeah, we can turn you into an uncanny exiled monster, too, and then we can send Perseus to kill you. What should be an effective investigation on behalf of thousands of survivors, the children born to them into this nightmare, and likely as many dead, is patriarchally reversed into ongoing and violent transparency. That's all I got right now. You know, I remember in the early 2000s, the 2010s maybe, one of my former professors released a book, and he was interviewed on the radio, and in it he said the interesting thing about the way that the Bush administration was lying to us about the Iraq war was that they were lying to us and not trying to hide it. They were lying right to our faces, letting us see that they were lying, and then moving on, keeping on going, right? They didn't bother to hide the lie. The truth became part of the lie, right? This is that. This moment with the Trump regime, with most of the dictatorial regimes, with the Epstein fucking class, with the hundreds of thousands of men in the US and across the global north mostly, but the global south too, who, you know, consume child rape media, etc., who rape children. I mean, the word pedophile is just too pretty at this point for what these people do. They do it right in front of us now. This right in front of us. They're revealing themselves, except for their names, right? They're revealing what they did, what they do, what they are still doing, and how much of an effect it has had on our world. And they are expecting us to fucking cower. Because we don't want to be vicious. We don't want to be other. We don't want to be exiled. We don't want to have snakes growing from our heads. We don't want to be made a monster and then sent out to wait to die. But I mean, fuck it. They're showing us all of that truth to hurt us. There's no virtue in it. There's no moral or social good in it. Not that they're going to allow. We do have just a little bit space left to choose differently, to insist differently. There's so many projects out there working on imagining and building our way into a matriarchal, a matrist, a care-centered way of life. They've been going on for decades and decades too. They've been marginalized and underfunded and forgotten and hidden and paved over and never allowed into the mainstream media and driven out of tenure and driven out of university departments. And they've been marginalized as hard as possible because they're a legitimate alternative. Just exactly the way that the second wave feminist analysis has been marginalized and paved over and memory hold because it presented a dangerously accurate and powerful critique. We have the tools. We have the vision. We even have some allies, as much as we don't feel like it. We even have some allies. That's 80% of what we need, right? To start really building. I think it's time to get real goddamn practical about it. I mean, Medusa's blood is both poison and medicine. So buy Medusa's blood. Let us build on behalf of these new Medusas. Okay. Stay rad. Stay witchy. Be good to each other. And raise hell, cousins. The Furies, they feel their time is coming.